That's a good group. So, well, welcome everyone to our panel discussion this evening. The 21st century, as Bill Nericcio has in his background, the 21st century Labyrinth, humanities degrees and publishing careers. Our panelists are going to be Steven Burr, Bill Nericcio, and Donna Seaman. They will talk with us a little bit about how they landed in careers having to do with books and publishing, as well as teaching and other creative projects. They'll also talk a little bit about what sorts of jobs are out there in the literary world, as well as ways that the publishing world and the world of books can also dovetail into other cool humanities projects. I am your moderator, Amy Danzer. I work at Northwestern University, where I manage several master's programs. I also direct the Summer Writers Conference for Northwestern, and I'm also on a couple of boards, the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame here in town, but also the Association for Graduate Liberal Studies Programs, the AGLSP, who, by the way, is the host of this evening's event. Without AGLSP, we would not be here. Well, I mean, maybe, but but they helped put the whole thing together. And I also want to give a shout out to San Diego State University Press. They're one of our sponsors, as well as the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences at San Diego State University. They also help sponsor this event. Just another little plug about AGLSP, like who are they, like what do they do? It's basically a collection of, a collective of graduate programs across the country that offer students programming that's just more for students to pursue interests that they're most fascinated by. You know, they're not hemmed in by some very rigid curriculum, but they can just really have a lot of freedom to pursue what they want to. I also want to note that the AGLSP is having a conference this October 10 through 12. And it's not too late to propose a presentation. May 1st is the deadline for that. And maybe Kim or Rebecca can include the links in the chat so people can learn more about AGLSP and the conference and San Diego State University Press and Booklist and all of that. What else? Other housekeeping things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk with our panelists first, and then at the very end, we'll open things up for Q&A. But if you have a question that comes to mind now, and you want to just kind of like hold that question so you don't forget it, please put that in the chat and we'll try to come back to it. And if we miss it, don't hesitate to raise your hand when it is Q&A time, and we'll try to get to it then. So without any further delay, I want to introduce our presenters, who I'm just so excited about. They're a few of my very favorite people. First, I'll introduce Dr. Steven Burr. He is taught at Georgetown University, Frostburg State University, and at Loyola University, Maryland, where he also served as Director of Program Operations for the Graduate Liberal Studies Program. He is also editor of Confluence, the journal of the AGLSP. Maybe that's another link that we can add into the chat. Dr. Burr's first book, Finite Transcendence, Existential Exile and the Myth of Home, examines the human engagement aesthetically and existentially with the finitude and limits that define human existence. Some light summer reading. More recently, he has written on identity, marginalization, and liberal education for the journals Zateo and Soundings, as well as the foreword to Duncan and Marjorie Phillips and America's First Museum of Modern Art. He completed his doctoral work in liberal studies at Georgetown University. Next, I'm going to introduce Dr. William Nericcio, a Tejano cultural studies professor from Laredo, Texas, who began his career as a Latin Americanist focused on novels of the 20th century by Carlos Fuentes, Rosario Castellanos, Julio Cortázar, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. From his first assistant professorship at the University of Connecticut, he moved to San Diego State University, where his work has expanded into critical studies of film, mass culture, television, and cutting-edge Latinx fiction. With a PhD in comparative literature from Cornell University, Nericcio currently directs the Malas Cultural Studies program at San Diego State University, and also runs the San Diego State University Press, which is the oldest independent scholarly press in the California State University system. His latest book, co-authored with Frederick Luis Aldama, is Talking #Brown TV, Latinas and Latinos on the Screen. And finally, Donna Seaman. She is the editor for adult books at Booklist. She is a member of the content leadership team and National Advisory Council for the American Writers Museum, a recipient of the James Friend Memorial Award for Literary Criticism and the Studs Terkel Humanities Service Award. Seaman has written for the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, and other publications, and contributed biocritical essays to the Oxford Encyclopedia of American Literature and American Writers. She created the anthology In Our Nature, Stories of Wildness. Her author interviews are collected in Writers on the Air, Conversations About Books, and she is the author of Identity Unknown, Rediscovering 7 American Women Artists. Seaman was a writer in residence for Columbia College, Chicago, has taught at the University of Chicago, and currently teaches for the Northwestern University MA in writing and MFA in prose and poetry programs. So a warm welcome to all of you. If we could all clap, make some noise. I thought just to get things started, what would be interesting is if each of you could just talk for a few minutes about how it is that you landed in careers that deal with books or journals, teaching, etc. I don't know who wants to go first. Steven.
All right. Do you remember that time in the chat when I said, is Memo going?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do Nericcio first. Come on, Nericcio.
So my story, I think, is probably going to be a little bit different from everyone else's. So I'm genuinely curious to see sort of how much useful information I can give. Hopefully I can give a lot. People talk all the time about how there's such a wide range of jobs that you can get with a humanities degree. And that's definitely true. With just a bachelor's in philosophy, I worked in graphic design, I worked in manufacturing, I worked in elementary education, curriculum development, and I finally landed a job in scientific, technical, and medical publishing. Right, so that was sort of how I got into publishing directly. But a little bit later into my career, I got more into graduate liberal studies programs. So I completed my master's in my late 20s. I completed my doctorate in my late 30s. And specifically because of those programs and my work in those programs, I was able to really better understand sort of what my values are and what my place in this extremely diverse world is. And it really helped me to figure out better how I wanted to use my energy and my time and my education. So for me, and this is just a quick little story, the crystallizing event for me was 2015. And by that point, I had been living in Baltimore for probably about 20 years. And most people probably know about what happened in Baltimore in the spring of 2015. So Freddie Gray was killed in police custody. There was a lot of sort of energy in the city at that time. There were some, we called it an uprising. The people on the outside called it a riot. It wasn't a riot, but there was a lot of things that people felt and believed that kind of came to a head during this time. And what was really interesting to me, the graduate program at Loyola University in Baltimore, and I don't feel bad naming them because the program does not exist any longer. But the night of the biggest sort of disruption in the city, there was a student who was scheduled to present her capstone, which is basically the Loyola version of the master's thesis. It was not required, but she had opted to do one. However, she lived close by to where some of the activity was happening in the city, and somebody actually had to physically go and get her, take her to campus so that she could deliver her capstone. Why is that relevant? it stood out to me at that time and in the time that followed that Loyola was, in a sense, directly involved in the events of what was happening. More indirectly, Loyola University is only a couple of miles away from where a lot of this was happening. And what troubled me about the program was how little attention was paid to it, how little they did to sort of react to that, right? I wasn't working at Loyola at the time, but I was a resident of Baltimore City, and I wound up joining this nonviolence group where every Friday night we would go out and we would walk the city and we would just talk to people in the most violent neighborhoods and try to learn about what their struggles were, and what they needed and why was there violence, right? So when I went back to Loyola in 2016 to co-run the Graduate Liberal Studies program, those events and that occurrence really stuck with me. And I felt like one of the great things about the program at Loyola, and it was the location of the university being right in the middle of a very diverse but segregated city, but it's also the curriculum that constituted that program was so well equipped to try to make sense of these kinds of things that were happening, not just in Baltimore, but all across the country. So for me, once I was co-running that program, I really tried hard to bring those kinds of real world challenges into the curriculum, right? These were things that I wanted built into the program, that I wanted us to be able to discuss in classes, to be able to think through and work through together. And it was effective. So all of this is really a long way of saying that a lot of the experiences that I've had, both in my past careers, as well as just being a citizen in the city and a citizen of this country, specifically because of the contexts and the things that I've learned in graduate liberal studies, the ways of thinking about things and of talking about things that I've learned in these programs, it's allowed me to bring all of this together and to be a better educator, first and foremost, and to be a better editor. And I'll talk more about that if we talk about Confluence and the different things that I have the wonderful opportunity to do through that. But it's also allowed me to become a better writer as well, because again, for me, it's been all about really crystallizing not just my values, but also sort of what I think I know about the world and what I want to learn more about, but also help others to learn more about through teaching, through writing, basically. I think that was more than 2 or 3 minutes, and I apologize.
It's a lovely, you're advocating also for humanities degrees, beyond just career, right? Like just how important they are to just interpreting what's going on, on the television, on the radio, on social media.
Go
ahead.
I always say in these things that I wind up being the least, or the voice of least practicality, because I know that I'm always supposed to talk about the ways in which this is really beneficial career-wise and those kinds of things. And it is, and those things are important. But I find that I very often, primarily because of where my experience has taken me, I sort of go off track a little bit and get more into those kinds of things.
No, and I love it. And that's one of the reasons why you're on this panel discussion, Steven Burr. You want to say a little something about Confluence and just what your role is there and what you do?
Sure. So since 2016, the AGLSP has given me this amazing opportunity to be the editor of the journal. Back when I took it over, you were eligible to submit manuscripts if you were a student, an alum, or an educator that was in an AGLSP member program. This is no longer the case. Practically speaking, the journal, for the most part, becomes a voice for new scholars, right? So we do get a lot of student papers from graduate students or from recent graduates. We get papers submitted from faculty members at programs, typically faculty members who are just starting out. We're not the most prestigious disciplinary journal out there, but I think we're a strong journal. And again, one of our great things is that we are sort of a beginning opportunity for a lot of people who want to get published and who are maybe looking to get published for the first time. We publish scholarly work, but we also publish creative writing, poetry, creative nonfiction, art. If anybody wants to submit art, we haven't had art submitted in a long time. Look, everybody who's ever tried to publish in a scholarly publication has gotten that rejection letter where they make you never ever want to write another sentence again for the rest of your life. And most times the criticism that you get is warranted, right? Because you've written a poor paper, because you've never done this before. I take pride in the fact that we are the opposite of that. You know, with Confluence, we do get a lot of papers that aren't quite ready to be published, but if they have even the beginnings of a really good idea that should be shared, we're going to go out of our way to give guidance, to give time, to give whatever support we can to help that writer get their work through to where it is ready to be published. And a lot of times, thankfully, this turns out being, you know, an opportunity that maybe people would not get elsewhere. So again, I have to say that I'm really grateful to the AGLSP for, you know, having this journal and for allowing me to do this for the journal, because that's been really cool to be able to get other people into this opportunity to be able to publish their work.
And I see that Bill Nericcio included the link into the chat. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
And some other comments are coming through there. Donna, did you want to talk a little bit about how you landed in the job that you've got?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm here with only a master's degree. I'm not a doctor. I got too busy working and never got back to school, but I really like what Steve was saying about, you know, why you do what you do. I never was career minded at all. I mean, I went to art school, which really is one of those choices that a lot of parents and guidance counselors wince over terribly, and it is very difficult to make your way. But a fine arts degree, all the humanities degrees are so meaningful to you as a human being, hence the humanities, and that's all I ever really cared about. And I was very kind of divided between the visual and the literary, but always tipped back towards the books. So my entire career, such as it is, has been following the books. And I realized that while I like to make things, that writing is making things. And I became quite fascinated by the entire publishing process. And I studied book design and went on and got an MA in English because I was really hungry for the literary side of things and wanted to know, you know, how real scholars talk about literature, not art students. And the combination of those two really propelled me and have continued to inspire me. What Steve was saying about starting out, it's so important to write and to have people look at your work. And I found early on in working at publishing that reviews were a way to do that. That's a very a good portal into the publishing world, because if you're passionately reading all the time, as I'm sure most everyone is in this group, and you feel that urge to write about what you're reading, you're already partly in the world you hope to grow into and work into. So I found my way to different places. I always worked in like not-for-profits, including bookstores, I'm sad to say, and libraries. And I realized there's an entire world of associations and not-for-profit organizations that have publishing programs. They publish magazines, they have websites now and all sorts of informational aspects, books. There's all kinds of editorial jobs in there. They're not especially well paying, but they're important, they're meaningful. I found the American Library Association to just dovetail with everything I cared about. Freedom to read, you know, freedom of access to books, to walk into a public library and not have to spend money to read was, you know, a huge boon to me as a kid and all my life. And, you know, you live in a city like Chicago, which has really taken its public library system seriously, as more branches than most big cities. Just to be part of that world has been so important to me. And also to support writers as a book review editor. We select and assign as many books as we can. Booklist is one of the pre-publication magazines that you see quotes from a lot. Our sisters are Library Journal and Kirkus Reviews and Publishers Weekly. So these are those short capsule reviews, which when I first started doing this, people sort of rolled their eyes about in the literary world until Twitter came along and everyone said, wow, those are perfect. So the evolution of publishing has been really interesting to be part of, but always, you know, the main impetus of myself and the people I work with is to get books to people in as many ways as you can. We're in a time of intense book challenges again, and ALA is on the front lines of helping librarians and teachers defend the freedom of access to read and talk freely about the world and our history. And I'm very proud to be part of that. We do lots of panels and webinars and outreach to support writers and teachers and librarians. So, you know, if you're interested in publishing, you want to write, you want to keep reading, you love the process, there are so many ways to participate. And I know we'll be talking more about that. So thanks.
Thanks, Donna. Do you have any recommendation, like in terms of like if somebody wanted to write book reviews or just start getting involved in all of that, like are there any like initial places that they should start out with, or do you have any advice on that?
I recommend going to all the book websites. Go to Books A Million, go to LitHub. You know, just do some research. There's a lot of places out there that do reviews. You know, there's the whole citizen reviewing on Goodreads, which, you know, there's a lot of not great stuff on there, but there's also talent. Write to me at Booklist and ask about reviewing. You know, all the pre-pubs have, you know, just huge battalions of reviewers out in the world. So those are all ways in. You know, a lot of journals have reviews. If you're working on a literary journal at your school and there's reviews in there, that's a great place to start. And, you know, the more interest you have beyond like literature itself and English, the better too. You know, think about the things you also love to do, gardening, walking, traveling, whatever. Many opportunities to write about that beyond the more obvious literature.
That's a really good idea. I once had like a travel Jones, and I was like, how great would it be to just like write travel blogs, you know? And like, so like I went to the little magazine store in Evanston, and I just like started writing down all the magazines, and then I just lost steam, but that's
the right,
right?
The right instinct. Yes, and I will just throw in the word research. If you're looking for opportunities, research. Look for places that you are interested in reading yourself, and see how you can contribute to that.
Yep, good. And Bill, can you say a little something about how you got to where you're at?
I just want to say I'm resentful that I have to follow these two, you know.
I know.
First Burr with his meaningful interventions in the world, and then Donna. Without ALA, I never would have been a bestseller academic writer, which is 6,000 copies. No Stephen King, but for us, it was like, whoa! I got an ALA Choice review, and my life changed. I mean, it's just amazing. So I'm very I'm humbled to be on the stage with these folks. I got started because my grandmother hid comic books under her mattress. Ana Juarez in Laredo, Texas, loved Archie and Little Dot and Big Lotta, and me and my sister Josie would sneak in to her bedroom, and we would read comics on her bed and learned English. And Josie was older than me, and she taught me how to read basically. And so the amazing thing in my life is that now I'm a professor of English, you know. Oh God, that is such a mood killer at cocktail parties.
Professor, come on.
Are you gonna correct my English? Oh my God, I'm not a grammarian. Shut up already. Anyway, I'm an English professor who now publishes comics, because one of the jobs I get to do at San Diego State University Press, a very small but fighting independent press. We got to fight. We got to support independent presses. It occurred to me that my buddy up east, who's now in Austin, Frederick Luis Aldama, had founded a comic books publishing imprint with the Ohio State University Press. Oh my God, they're so pretentious. The Ohio State University Press. Anyway, the San Diego State University Press said, well, we can do that too. So I started a comic book printing imprint. But going back to what Burr was saying, literature, the humanities, publishing, they're interventions. We are not just sitting back and watching the world unfold. You publish a book, you have a stake. You're making a wager, and what you're making a wager on is people. And so SDSU Press, what do we focus on? We focus on, you know, we're very eclectic. We, because I'm Chicano from South Texas, predictably, we focus on Latinx and Mexican American and Latin American studies. But we also publish books on the European avant-garde, on border culture, border theory, and art history. And we're always looking for manuscripts from people who are going to take us in a new direction. I've got an inbox, just like all of you. It's an email inbox. Folks send me books. They're not all good. Some of them are pretty weird, but we love them and we read them. We read the proposals and we do the old thumbs up. We do the old thumbs down. We've got a board of editors in-house, 7 professors from SDSU, 7 professors across the country. And, you know, we get feedback. We pass manuscripts around. Where do we want to make an intervention? Where do we want to change things? Where do we want to be a catalyst for metamorphosis? And basically, to help the world be a better place, we could use a little of that, you know, between Putin with his thermonuclear hyperbombs and COVID. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm about ready to go into the basement. I don't even have a basement. I'm in California. I'll dig one, right? But that's what we do. And if we have a little time later, I'll show you some pictures of what we do.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So Steve and Bill, just having been around liberal studies for as long as you have, and just, you know, helping students and alums kind of find their way in the world, you've been witness to just so many careers launching, and I'm wondering if you could just maybe rattle off a list of just some cool jobs in books and journals, but also just, you know, maybe in some unexpected areas that you wouldn't normally think of, you know, the humanities degree kind of like launching you into.
Yeah, can I go first, Steve?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, not only, I mean, the thing is I wear so many sombreros, right? I'm a professor of English. I run SDSU Press, but I also run an interdisciplinary studies program, MALAS, modeled on the AGLSP archetype. And so our students are everywhere. I've got an alum who is a psychological emotion whisperer to dolphins at SeaWorld. I've got 2 art curators who are changing the world of art through their curatorship. We've got professors. We make professors. We at SDSU top out at the master's level, but we send people all over the country to Iowa, to Brown, to Yale. We send them, they become professors, and they start teaching. SDSU is a state university, what they used to call a polytechnic in the old days, a teacher's college. But SDSU is aspirational, which means they extract more surplus value from the professors. And that means we send folks to become curators, professors, dolphin whisperers, travel writers, authors on general topics, religious studies chairs of departments, all kinds of folks. That's the thing about the humanities. We call our program, because I used to think I was going to be an ad man, we call it the MA in Curiosity. And we're not messing around. That's what we are. I don't care what you study. I don't care about the mix. I just care that you work with the best people in the area you're curious about, because that's the only way that we hone our craft, that we become, I don't know, better agents of change. And that's what it's about. We're an imperfect species. So we've got to help folks be agents of change.
Yeah. How about you, Burr?
So for a period of time, interestingly, and maybe not as relevant here, but I used to see a huge number of people who either wanted to be teachers or who already were teachers, who were getting their master's in liberal studies. And the interesting thing about that was that, a lot of the times this was a case of an educator needed to get a master's degree to be able to then get, I don't know, a raise or maintain certification or whatever. But what would typically happen is, especially for those students who had done an undergraduate degree specifically in education, but who were now doing a broader humanities degree for their master's, it would change the way that they would teach. And not only would they bring different ideas into the classes that they were already teaching, or different approaches into the classes that they were already teaching, but in some cases, these teachers would create new sort of quasi mini curricula where they would be given the opportunity to explore themes that maybe they weren't exploring in their classes before, but they had been inspired to do so through some of the coursework that they had done in their masters. So that was always really neat. We've also had, I've seen a lot of people who have come from our program and get deeper into publishing. A lot of it is editorial work or editorial production work, which isn't necessarily sexy, but it's one of those things that's always in need, and it does happen to pay fairly well. I've had people come out of this and get into social work. I've had people who come out of this, and I mentioned the capstone before. What the capstone project was for us, it did not necessarily have to be a scholarly paper. It could be something completely different. And we had students who would, they would take that opportunity to write their novel. And we've had a couple of people who have come through our program when it was our program and would go on to a career in writing, in part, and we were never a creative writing program. So I would not say that, we helped these people launch their writing careers. But if nothing else, the opportunity to do a capstone was that time, that dedicated time where you have the time and the opportunity to write this book, but you also have somebody who's working with you to encourage you, to keep you on schedule. So yeah, I mean, I think that the program does get a little bit of credit with that. Another one, just sort of one-off example, one of the last capstones that I mentored was for a woman who was working in a regular office job. I don't even remember what she was doing, but she had a strong interest in theater. And she did this amazing capstone project on something called playback theater, which if you know about, it's a very unique sort of way of putting on a show and conducting a show. And this isn't really the forum to explain it, but she wound up, as part of her capstone presentation, bringing a theater company in and doing one of these performances. And I think through that experience, it got her back into theater, but it also allowed her to see exactly what she was capable of with theater, because she accomplished this, right? She put together this extensive master's level project that was successful. And through that, she got back into theater and is working toward co-running a theater program. So, I mean,
wow. Yeah,
that's one of the neat things about these humanities degrees is you have that kind of freedom and flexibility that you wouldn't typically have in a disciplinary program. And you get to explore these things more, but do it in a way that's productive, in the sense that it does set you up to better understand what you need to do if you want to make a go of this as a career, to give you the confidence to do it, and to give you the work to get you started in doing it. And that's the big thing that I've seen with our students.
A bit of a sandbox.
If you will, yes.
I mean, yeah.
If we still had a program, I would put that in the marketing materials. That would be fantastic. The intellectual sandbox.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've had the same thing in our liberal studies program. We have, just the creative project option, and we've had students write and put on plays. We've had them put together a documentary film, and then they end up doing these creative projects, beyond their, once after they graduate. So even if you end up with, the job that you still had, like, you still have these other pursuits, right? And that's another thing that I think all three of you, when we were talking in earlier emails, you had addressed, it's just that it can be a launch pad into other creative pursuits. Donna, did you want to say, I was, you taught at Columbia College, you teach for Northwestern, you also have been around students who have gone on to do really interesting things, and you've just, you work for this national association, and you've just worked with a slew of literary figures throughout the years. If you could maybe just talk a little bit too about just jobs that are out there in the literary world, especially, you know, ones that are obvious maybe, but then also some that are not so obvious. Because I think for a lot of us who are just kind of, you know, at the precipice of that world, you know, where it's kind of mystifying, you know, and then once you're in it, you're like, oh yeah, there are 150 people in this building, you know, and they all work for this, you know, book company. But like, what are those jobs?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to talk about that. And we've also had a lot of interns come through Booklist and ALA. So I have seen people, you know, sort of graduate on to different things following their passion. I will say that I think of publishing as an ecosystem, a very complicated one, and there's many, many ways to participate in it. The whole editorial world is very complicated. There's acquisitions editors, there's, you know, development editors, there's copy editors, you know, the techie stuff. You know, Steve was saying, you know, it's not sexy, but it's good work. And, you know, there's deep ethics to every aspect of publishing. I mean, a copy editor has ethics. You bring values to what you're doing, and you take facts seriously, you take precision and, you know, accuracy, fairness, all this comes into play. So what may seem, you know, proofreading, all these things have humanitarian aspects to them in interesting ways. And that's why people get so attached to them. You know, these are can be lifelong careers. I personally can't believe how long I've been doing what I've been doing. And I work on all those levels, you know, depending what you're doing. So I work with, you know, people that are expert copy editors, you know, the very technical side of editing. You know, I myself do more, you know, the content editing, the first stage of that, and also assigning things and developing articles with people, and, you know, trying to encourage people to be creative about certain aspects of their contributions to what we do. At ALA, working with writing students too, and you know, there's work in publishing in the publicity and promotion aspects, which can really involve a lot of creativity. Your both visual and verbal skills are very important in that world. There's the whole literary agency world, which I have met some amazing people. When I talk to students about working in publishing, you know, I just talk about the dedication, about how it isn't really like a 9-to-5 sort of job. It's a deep commitment, and it really fills your life in many, many ways and attaches to many things. You can work in museums in their publishing department. Universities have alumni offices, and they publish really excellent magazines. I have friends that do things like that. You know, even the corporate world has publishing. I mean, editors have left ALA and gone to places like Blue Cross Blue Shield and found kindred spirits in the communications department, and they publish kind of surprisingly interesting publications. You can be creative in any number of realms and work in publishing on many, many levels, and find it really satisfying, and be involved with people that remain curious. That's a really key word for what we do, who really care about excellence and standards and want things to be their absolute best, you know, who believe in facts and truth and keeping things correct on the up and up. You know, trying to fight misinformation and disinformation, and you know, the internet has just exploded all that. There's a lot of really good social media jobs and web design jobs where you can help kind of push back against, you know, the dark side of publicity and websites. I was just listening to a story this afternoon about how a lot of these book banning events, which I sort of consumed with, are orchestrated. They're really politically motivated. They're fake in essence. These are not actually, some of them are not actually outraged parents, or they're people that have been told, you know, various lies, and there's fraud involved. So there's aspects of editorial work where you try to push back against that kind of thing, where you're seeking facts and truth. So, you know, even what might seem like a humble job, if you're really committed to it, has great depth. And I have seen people work in all those different ways in publishing that started out as writing students or English students or sociology students, people studying theater and painting and sculpture, and all find ways to participate in this world. And, you know, that teaching for me just came very naturally out of wanting to talk about these things and share these experiences. And, you know, every fresh set of eyes on a book or a manuscript is you learn from, everyone learns from.
Donna, you had mentioned earlier just about how important it is to research, you know, like when you're trying to like break into a field. And I'm hoping that the three of you can talk a little bit more about that, just about like, you know, just how to figure out like the landscape of a particular company or, field, are there resources that you would recommend to people who are attending this presentation? Websites that you had mentioned some literary publications earlier, but Steve and Bill, if you have recommendations too, I think we're all we've got our pens and paper out looking for sage advice.
I think I would give the advice that I give to, I used to, not so much anymore, but I used to give a fair number of outreach talks to at-risk kids and post-risk kids and the kids who have to come to your presentation or they have to go to jail. So it's like they come to see me and what I have to say, and I would always give them this advice, and it involves libraries. And I know that online indexes are the way to go. I can surf Project Muse and JSTOR with the best of them. But my advice to my students, and I told them this semester, is to go to the library and get lost. And do not go to the library with a research agenda. Go to the library and start looking at books and subjects that you like. And don't tell anybody about it. Don't Instagram it. Don't Facebook it. Don't Snapchat it. Just do it and shut up and make it your secret little mission to find a book in a subject area you love. My favorite is, I'm a frustrated art historian and graphic designer. So I like to look up surrealists like Man Ray, and I'll look up the code like, I don't know, PN 336, whatever. But then I look for the plus. And in our library, what the plus means is that they're oversized folios. So these are giant books, full color, and I go crazy just prowling. I'm in the library. I've got all these books laid out on the floor, many more books than I could ever buy. And, I luxuriate them, and then I find one I like and I check it out, and maybe I scan it. Maybe then I post on it. Maybe then I research it. But this whole idea of just shutting up to social media, which I love and adore, people will testify to this.
Yes.
But shut up to it. Don't share. Go to the library, find your secret love and nurture it. And amazing things happen when you nurture a secret love.
Damn, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I warned you about this ahead of time, Danger, that I don't have a ton of great advice when it comes to this, but this past semester, for the first time in a long time, I taught undergraduate students, and I actually had first year composition. And that was a really cool experience. But one of the things that I would advise those students in their writing was to resist that compulsion to write what you think the university wants you to write, or to write in the way in which you think the university wants you to write. And I would try really hard to assign readings that represented almost exclusively different marginalized or not quite as publicized or ignored voices and groups and predicaments and challenges, to say, like, these are all people who just wrote what they felt and they wrote about what they cared about. And my hope for each of them, there are certain things that you have to teach them, because it's a first year writing class, right? And you want them to be able to succeed in all the other classes that they take where they have to write something. But you also don't want them to lose those particular unique things that they value, and you want to encourage them to explore that, to research about it, right? To learn enough that you can say something about those things authoritatively and in a way that inspires more thought and more response. And so that was always my advice, and that's the advice that I'll continue to give for as long as I have a forum in which to do it, is just, focus on saying what it is that you really want to say. Explore the things that matter to you. Don't worry as much, and this is in a way kind of impractical advice, don't worry as much about what the right outlet is for that. Because if you write what you really believe and what you're really interested in, you're far more likely to see it through, first of all. That's what I would always tell students who are doing a capstone. Don't write about what you think we want you to do. Do something you care about, because if you don't, you won't finish it, period. And so it's that same kind of thing. Like, if you really want to do the best job you can do with this particular project, however large or small it is, if you don't care about what you're writing about, you're not going to see it through and you're not going to do it well. Once you've done that, then worry about, well, where does this go? What is the place where I can share this? Because there's always a place. It's just a matter of finding it. And unfortunately, I think that's the question that you're asking, right? Is how do you best find those places?
Yeah,
and I don't really know. I'm not great at that.
No, but I think what you and Bill are also hitting on is just this transferable skill, though, of research, where when you are in a humanities program, like, you learn to be resourceful, and you also learn to follow your nose and kind of, go toward things that are curious to you or fascinate you or inspire you. And so I feel like we need to bring that same kind of energy to, the looking for a different occupation, just the diligence of research, and even like going to a librarian at a university and saying, look, I want to know who the publishers are in Chicago or New York, and I just want a list. And then you can just focus your web searches on those lists, and then look and see what kinds of positions are available, are part of that organization's roster, So yeah, anyway, I think research is key, and again, following your interest. Donna, were you going to say something about it too, or?
Yeah, I can mention a couple of organizations that are interesting. There's ACES, ACES, which is a Society for Editing. It's really interesting just to look at their website. The membership isn't too terrible. Joining organizations is really helpful. You get a lot of information. So ACES is kind of cool, and you get a sense of what people are doing, what their jobs are like. They talk about different projects and what different terminology means when you talk about a copy editor or other kinds of editors. So you get a sense of actual jobs and what people do in them. There's also editor and publisher, EMP, which is really about the news, but it's absolutely fascinating. It's about what's going on with newspapers and other media coverage. These are professional or not-for-profit organizations, and it's just kind of interesting to peek in there, even if you just kind of tool around their websites a little bit, just to get a sense of what goes on and what people do and what those job titles mean. If you're interested in the reviewing side of things, the National Book Critics Circle is a really cool group. They have a good website. They talk a lot about reviewing. They offer a lot of good webinars and workshops. They give the NBCC Book Awards every year, and they have a big committee of critics. I used to be on the board, and they just offer a lot of encouragement about publishing. And the people on the board, if you read their bios, they do really cool things all around the country. So that, just to get a sense of what people do and how they work. Books, of course, the more time you spend in the library, the better. I was such a book geek in high school. I used to keep lists of publishers that I really liked. And to this day, those that have survived continue to offer good guides for me. And you can learn a lot about how books are published from just looking at books, reading acknowledgments, frankly, in the back, and also going to literary agents' websites and seeing who they represent and why. There's just tons of information out there. Every publishing website is kind of a course in what's being written now and how things are categorized and who the new authors are. I've been doing been in Booklist a long time. I have never seen so many first-time authors ever. The last couple of years have been absolutely incredible. This started before COVID and seems to really be continuing. Really interesting new voices, fresh approaches, lots of genre bending, both in fiction and nonfiction. I think it's a very dynamic and fluid time for the publishing world, really on all counts. I would also mention looking at places that have causes that you care about. I totally agree with what Steve was saying. You've got to be passionate about what you're doing. That's what keeps you working and keeps your mind engaged. So if you're interested in environmental things, you know, go to some environmental websites. They all have blogs. Many of them publish magazines of one sort or another. There's just so many opportunities out there if you just keep opening your mind. You know, look at an arboretum's website. You know, do they have newsletters? Do they publish magazines? There's just so many ways that you can participate in communicating and helping people learn. You know, learning is a lifelong practice that one can be devoted to, and publishing is really a way to do that for yourself and for others.
That was one thing that that's one of my questions that I was going to ask you, the three of you, is just, you know, what ways has the pandemic impacted the world of books and publishing? And I know, Bill, you also have a whole thing about books and evolving technology, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that as well.
Sorry, briefly, yeah, everything's slowed down a little bit. I mean, the thing I mean, university presses are already slow, and we're slower than most. And because it's me and just a few other characters, you know, we've been down. We got down. I'll be honest, I have 7 books I've got to push out by August. And, you know, I'm the director of the press and I'm running lead on it. And I got to get them out. You know, my authors are there. Oh, you said March. And I meant March when I said March. It's just, yeah, COVID got me down, then Putin got me down, and you know, we're human. We slow down. We slow down if you're driving the editorial force. But I can show you what we've been up to briefly. 2 minutes, maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you should see the title for this talk here. So this is SDSU Press. Graphically, we try to catch your eye, you know, give you a sense of what we're about. We honor the old tradition of Gutenberg, and we are a press. We put out books and we hope people read them. SDSU Press is a leader in the history of avant-garde arts in Latin America and Europe. This is our best-selling book by Owen Smith on the history of the Fluxus art movement. We publish comic books. We just published this book, Phantom Zone, by Jose Alanis, who's a Chicano Slavic Russian studies professor at the University of Washington, who happened to also be a cartoonist for the University of Texas newspaper, the Daily Texan. Graphically, we're eclectic. Again, we want to shock you, grab your eye. Every book that we ship out, that we sell, we plaster with images. This is our latest anthology. I was really happy to edit it along with Antonio Raffaelli, a leading semiotician from Italy, and Frederick Louis Saldama, who I've mentioned before, about 30 essays by some of the best cutting edge artists. We publish critical studies on comic books. This is the definitive collection of interviews with breakout Latinx comic book artists. Again, European avant-garde arts. Zaum is Russian Dada. And though we may be down on Putin, we're not down on Russian arts. And Zaum is definitely something to study. This is our most recent book in our comic books series. We've branched out to animation, Black representation in the world of animation. And you'll ask me, how do these things come to me? They come into my inbox. I see something, I like it. My editorial board thumbs it up. We publish it. Darius Gaynor, 22-year-old undergraduate at the Ohio State University. You're saying, no way an undergraduate could get published by a scholarly press. You're wrong. We published him. A Mexican woman wrote a memoir about how her father got kidnapped in Mexico City. She draws in watercolor. This was the first comic book we ever published, a memoir by Claudia Dominguez. We publish books by playwrights. This is a great Chicano playwright. Do you hear the motif, Chicano? Yeah, when you're the publisher of a press, you can supplement what's missing. And what's missing in the history of American arts and culture are the Mexican Americans. And I've decided as a publisher to intervene on that scene and do something about it. Comparative structural theory of arts. This is a book of ours that was out of print. We reprint them, we republish them, right? Psychoanalysis on the couch. We are interested in the history of psychoanalysis on the West Coast. We're California based, we're regional. This guy Greenson was Marilyn Monroe's shrink. He happened to be a West Coast Freud. We publish his notes and papers. The Border Angels, Enrique Morones, changing the history of the Americas by saving people who were getting attacked along the US-Mexican border. Our latest book coming out in about 3 weeks, they made a list. Susan Letzler Cole, a really distinguished professor, sent us a book about her parents who kept the list of the first 200 words she learned as a baby. Who's going to publish that? We are, because it caught my eye. It was amazing with pictures and lists and artifacts, you know? And this, perhaps the most important, I live and work and profit on the lands, occupied lands of the Kumeyaay Tipai people. So what did we do as a press? SDSU Aztecs. Aztecs are our mascots. Don't get me started. Anyway, we published the first book collection of stories by the Kumeyaay people in English, Spanish, and Kumeyaay. Footsteps from the past into the future. Anyway, we're doing a lot of stuff out here on the West Coast, and I'm just happy I get the time to share it with you.
No, that's great. Thank you, Bill. Donna, how about you and Booklist? How have things changed? Everything's digital, right?
Right. Yes, it was incredibly challenging to go from print to digital. It was very difficult, but there's some advantages. We now have a constant archive of everything that we're sending out for review. It took a lot of adjustments. Publishing was in some chaos, of course. Things got very slowed down and very confusing. A lot of books were held up. So, you know, everything's very detail oriented at Booklist. So all the pub date changes, all this made the difficult jobs incredibly more difficult, but we adapted. And I think, you know, we keep sort of reinventing ways to do things. And I think that we're back on an even keel, and publishers have really impressed me. I mean, we mostly review books published by trade publishers, some university and college presses when we can. Bill, I'm going to write to you about some of your books.
We got to change this. We got to talk, please.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. No, we really, any creative works published by university and college presses. Choice does the academic stuff. Booklist does the stuff for just pleasure reading mostly.
You mean the good stuff?
Yeah, I mean the good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
So publishing really seemed to rebound itself. I mean, it was really interesting to watch. And again, to talk about dedication, talk about commitment, that people just would not give up no matter how bizarre and difficult it got, no matter how many hours we spent, lashed to our little machines. We kept things going. We did not miss a single issue. We worked with publishers to make sure they were submitting things electronically that we could actually share with our reviewers. We just did not stop. And we started new reviewers, and Booklist created its kind of a new advisory board to reflect a lot of changes in the profession and in the world. Very sensitive to what was going on in people's lives in so many ways. And so, yeah, I'm proud of what we did and what we're seeing from publishers.
I'm just realizing the time here. And so I want to make sure that the people who are online can benefit from having access to the three of you. So I could ask you guys questions like all night, because I'm just endlessly, well, I just adore you three, but also just there have a billion. But let's open it up to people who are on the call to ask questions of Steve and Bill and Donna. Are there some in the chat already that I haven't seen yet?
I love the way you say people who are on the call. It's like we're on an all-night radio show.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I love
Why
radio.
are we doing that?
I love it.
Our at-home audience. I mean, it's just so weird. I'm still adjusting.
We have Dee who has raised her hand.
Oh, Dee.
Hi, Cam. Thank you for that. So I have a very boring question, a very technical question. And then I have one that I think is career oriented from where I am. The boring question is, so I was raised on my undergrad with MLA, have looked at the giant book, Chicago Style, and cried a little. So is there a purpose to my developing a higher skill level outside of MLA, or should I just say to heck with it? And when I'm looking at working with a project that is, I mean, and this is future speak, with a project or a writing project that is outside of my skill level, and just saying, you know, you're going to have to give me a minute. I'm a quick learner. I promise to give you what you're looking for, or should I take more responsibility and develop it more now? Like, I don't know, practicing on stupid one paragraph items to edit in those styles.
Can I jump in? Because I have pet peeves in this regard. I love Chicago. I'm okay with MLA and APA. Chicago style book lets you signal the debt as a writer. I'm a scholar, right? Scholar. We owe debts to the people who did all the research before us that we benefit from. I just find that Chicago is a more elegant way of formatting. It is our preference at SDSU Press, probably because it's my preference at SDSU Press, because it kind of forces you as a style book to tip your hat to the folks whose work influenced yours.
Okay.
Yeah, we rely on it too. I will say though that, you know, every publication has its own style. And you're trained on the job, or even when you're doing freelance work, you're provided with a style manual usually, and a list of terms and things like that. Practicing editing work is not a bad idea, because like when people apply for jobs, they're usually given things to edit. I mean, that's part of the application procedure. So the more comfortable you are with that, the better, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the answer really depends on what it is that you're looking to do, right? So if you're primarily focused on your own writing, then maybe it's okay to just do what you're doing. And then if you identify a publisher or something that it would be a good target for your work, and then maybe their style is different, then you should concern yourself with it. But if you're looking to be an editor, so most of my livelihood is in editing, but a lot of it is in either AMA style or APA style. And what Donna said is exactly right. If you're looking to take on any kind of new work, you have to know their style, and you have to be able to demonstrate a familiarity with their style. It's not always difficult to do, right? Because it's very easy to find all of the criteria. But the thing of it is, like, each style has something funny. Each style has something a little hanky, a little unique. And it's knowing, as you're looking through a manuscript, it's knowing what are the kinds of things that you should be thinking about. Well, This one talked about this, and I know that that's funny. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that I need to look it up, because I know that this needs to be treated in a very specific way. So it really depends on what it is that you're looking to do, I think. But if you want to get into editing, I would agree with Donna that you should at least familiarize yourself with some of those things to some extent.
You know, there's online.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. There are online editing courses, or courses in person. Of course, University of Chicago Manual Style teaches them, and I've taken some of those, and they're incredibly helpful. They also have workshops where they kind of concentrate everything over a weekend, and those are often online. So if you're actually, if you're interested in that kind of thing, it does not hurt to do those, and you get a certificate and all that. So that can be an advantage.
Okay, great, thank you. So so I had some really great professors at U of H as an undergrad who were, you know, they have a great creative writing program. And then I tried teaching because my mother was a really great teacher. And yeah, blech. So what I work in now is really a social science field. And I work with the homeless population. And what I have discovered is that they are highly illiterate. And so now I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like, I miss teaching, but I don't want to just teach because I have a job. I want to really motivate people. So I'm wondering, you know, if there is a way to create like a literary program that is like a cross-disciplinarian setup that doesn't really, you know, you don't have a history class, you don't have a math class, and you don't have an English class. You have this, forgive the use of the word, you have this confluence of really great subject matter that just motivates people. The only word I can think, I would really like learning to be orgasmic for these kids and for adults, because I feel like they're so adrift without basic knowledge. Is that something that you see coming out of this program, as well as maybe working in the area of language and books and literature, so that I can work on this maybe as a capstone, something to refine and create that I can take to, you know, that I can make a program that is enlightening and purposeful?
Well, that's what we traffic in. We traffic in epiphanies or orgasms, to use your slightly vulgar parlance. The nuns that raised me are flipping in their graves.
That's good. It'll wake them up a little.
But absolutely, that is what we do. We traffic in epiphanies when we work in the humanities. Those of us who are lucky enough to be both professors, teachers, and writers and publishers. It is about the, no pardon the pun, the confluence. It's why AGLSP's journal is likely called Confluence. It's what we do. It is through the synergy of these related fields that we intervene and make an impact and contribute to our students and our readers' metamorphoses. You know, there's this great word from, I'm a recovering Catholic, right? And during the service, the bread and the wine turn into the body and blood of Christ. And that's, oh my God.
That like deliberate.
Is Jesus in the house? Oh my God. No, the word is transubstantiation. And we do that through ideas and through publishing and the like. And so I don't think you're very far off the mark. I don't know how you achieve it. We just do it because.
Well, to Dee's question, how do we do that? How do we better do that? So we're doing that for a collection of people who have at least a foundation in these things, right? And anything that we deal with either in the classroom or anything that comes our way to be published, presumably this has come from some kind of a foundation in these things. And if I'm understanding Dee's question correctly, it's how do we make these things a possibility for people who have not yet been fortunate enough to have that foundation?
Yeah. Right. In such a way that it's so captivating they can't help but. It's addictive. I want it to be addictive. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know what the answer is, but if you figure it out, I'd love to come work for you.
Well,
I think
you know, I have some great. I'm sorry, I interrupted. So I have some great leaders at Rice. So I'm pretty sure I will get there, and maybe I can hit you guys up at some point in the future and see, you know, if you will critique my idea. If you will,
please do.
If you have suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chris, looks like you have your hand up.
Pastore.
Yeah, hi. One thing I would say, Dee, is you don't need to do this later. You don't need whenever you write, whenever you discuss, whenever you present, it's not the last project you're ever going to do, right?
Right.
When you first take a creative writing workshop and someone's talking about memoir writing, you're not Winston Churchill, you're D, right? Everybody starts somewhere, and oftentimes where you start has no reflection on where you're going or where you really want to go. So one of the biggest things I see with whether we're talking writers or students, you know, I run a liberal arts program. I'm an art historian, you know, published some things, Confluence published something. And some of the things I've published are not like in my core area of interest. They're just something that I was having fun with and explored, and then said, let's run up the flagpole. And I think students as undergrads, students in graduate programs, folks in book groups, and academic scholars and professional writers oftentimes put too much weight on things, and they then delay because they don't think they're ready.
Okay.
And I think instead, take a chance, have fun, produce and share and learn from other people in the process. And that's how it becomes enjoyable. It becomes something you can really invest in as a passion. You will potentially get better, but sometimes you don't even want to get better. You just want to do it once and then move and try something else.
Okay.
Not everything needs to be the final work, finely crafted, finely honed, beautifully polished, and be a masterpiece that will transcend generations. But people wait, assuming that everything they create has to be that. And then we don't get a chance to benefit from all the cool stuff other people are doing because they're waiting. Get out there, have fun. And that can be the same thing with taking a class or writing a review or sending something off, you know, and signing up and being in a story slam and telling some creative writing that you developed. So have fun and don't be afraid to get out there and do things.
Okay. I like that. Thank you. Of course, you're making it possible, and that's a lot of pressure. So I may not talk to you again, but I do. But I think you're right. I think that's, and to hear it helps. So thank you.
All right. And I feel like we've kind of reached our time. If there's maybe one more question, otherwise, yeah, I feel like, oh, we have one more. And you know what, I think, Donna, if you need to go, that's totally fine. I know you had scheduled for just, till 7, so.
Thank you. I can stay a little while longer, but yeah, then I'll have to go. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Lou?
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt Lou before Donna leaves. Donna, please feel free to place some of your links in our chat so everybody can see upcoming things for Booklist or ALA, whatever you got.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I will.
I'm sorry, Lou. Go ahead.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Lou.
Just kind of about what you were just saying, so Chris, about, going out there and publishing and playing and, have fun. What about if you've self-published, which I haven't, so don't give me that look, but if you've self-published, does that mess you up? Or should you go through the rings? Should you, what are your thoughts on that?
My view is do everything simultaneously.
Okay.
If you're self-publishing, you're putting yourself through the rigmarole of producing something that looks like a book. That can be healthy. There are some folks that'll look down their nose at that shit. They will. They'll see create space and they'll go, oh my God. Like sometimes I go, oh my God, okay, well, you published your own book. So I believe, if I was a fisherman, which I'm not, I would have 7 fishing poles out at the same time, hoping that one of them will land. So I would actually go through the exercise of self-publishing while also simultaneously trying to publish along with reputable publishers and venues and magazines and journals and so forth. Dr. Burr, of course, opened our whole presentation with an appeal to people to contribute their work to Confluence. When people invite you to be published, take them up on their offer. I'm thinking of sending something to Steve. You know, he said he didn't get.
Hold you to that.
You know, you said you didn't get any artwork. I'm gonna you're gonna be, the transom is gonna be filled with my ridiculous art now.
Please.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, when always be closing, always be publishing, always be sending your stuff out. When I was an assistant professor and I got a rejection, and it took me 16 years to publish my first book. So it's not like, you know, I'm a rock star or anything. No, I had to beg people basically. When I got a no, back in the day, I just put a stamp on the envelope, put the rejected manuscript back in if they hadn't marked it up with their stupid pens, which usually they don't, because they don't even read it, you know, because half of these editors are dumb drunks, right? So you just put it in the next envelope and send it out, and you hope. It's like the message in the bottle. Right. I think writers need to have that stick-to-itiveness.
Bill, aren't you and I those dumb drunk editors?
Yes, now, but back in the day, I was that earnest little candide writer, you know, love my writing, you know, so yeah. So
on this whole question, I don't know that this is the best advice, okay? So I'll preface this by saying that I have heard heavy-hitting, established academics who have said, I will never publish again with another publisher. I will self-publish my work from here on. Now, they have the advantage of being known. And one of the great advantages of using a publisher, particularly a reputable publisher, if you are not known, is that they will do all the legwork for marketing your book. And that's something that is so like disproportionately difficult to do as an individual who is self-publishing, right? I mean, that's it from my point of view. If you leave aside all the nonsense about names and what names mean and what looks cool and what is going to get you credibility and blah, 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 if you cut all that out for a moment, which I know you can't fully do, right? As much as I wish that were the case, and as much as I wish it were the case that if you write something good, it will get out into the world because it's good. Like, I know that that's naive, right? But if you take all that aside, that's still the great advantage to working with a publisher, is that you can just write the work, you get it to them, and they get it out into the world. And they worry about making sure that it goes to the people who who most need to see it, or most want to see it, or will pay to see it, or whatever it is. I don't think that there is anything inherently wrong with self-publishing. I don't. It's like Bill said, it's a bit more work, right? But not necessarily, because you can find people who will do that production work for you. And it turns out it's really not that difficult. I mean, Confluence is essentially self-published because I don't go through a distributor. I don't go through a publisher. We do everything for ourselves. We print on demand. I typeset the book in the new sense of what typesetting means, because it's not really typeset. It's all very simple. And there's no reason why anybody who has written a book can't then do these things and get it out into the world. But again, the hard part is getting it fully out into the world, right? Anybody can write a book, have it printed, and have it listed on Amazon. None of those things are difficult to do. And if you have a good book that is of value, once it starts to get to the right people, then you're going to be fine. And I truly believe it won't matter who published it, but it's that hard part. It's that getting it out in numbers, getting it out in en masse so that people can actually see it and do something about it, right? I mean, that's the big challenge in my opinion.
You know, we actually have a section devoted to reviewing self-published books in Booklist. We work with a group in Denver called Blue Ink, because libraries absolutely acquire self-published books, and we take them seriously on the same level as other books. And so you're right. I mean, it particularly helps if you get editorial and production help. If it's vetted by someone other than the writer, that always makes a huge difference.
Yes.
it takes more eyes. You need other eyes on your work. But yes, Booklist, we do review because there's lots of good voices. I see there's a question in the chat. I often see books that were self-published picked up by commercial publishers and republished. If they're good and they find a readership, that really does happen. It really does happen. So it's always worth doing the writing, doing your very best work, getting someone help editorially, and finding every outlet you can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to wrap things up. So I just want to thank our panelists so much. Steven, Bill, Donna, this was just so great. I know some of us would like to hang out a little longer, but maybe we'll do a part 2.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we can just like unmute ourselves and clap, like actually audibly.
Yay.
I also just want to thank Kim Rapp and Rebecca Sharp and Chris Pastore from AGLSP, who also helped bring this, to fruition. And again, special thanks to San Diego State University Press and San Diego State Malus. And I just want to thank all of you at home, our at-home listeners, for tuning in tonight. And just
nobody said long-time listener, first-time caller.
Right, first-time caller. Not yet.
Well, you have to do that this couple years in a row to get there.
Oh, true.
Don't
true.
forget, I will be very disappointed. But yeah, just thank you everybody for joining us tonight. And
thank you, Amy.
And thank you, everyone. It was really great talking to everyone.
The